And so for those of you that were here last week, I have one question for you. Did you take a time out this past week? Did you press pause? You see, our takeaway from last week was life is short, press pause, and live at peace. Life is short, press pause, and live at peace. Now, peace will elude us if we try to keep up with the pace of modern day life. It will elude us. It's just the reality. There's too much going on. There are too many responsibilities. There are too many choices. And so peace will elude us. In fact, what we need to do, as we began to discover last week, is we need to eliminate what we called non-essentials. We need to eliminate some of those things in our lives that, just to be honest with you, they're not essential for our lives. In fact, we need to eliminate non-essentials so that we can focus on what matters most in life. What matters most to us? And what matters most for our lives. We need to focus on those things. You see, I had a really busy week this week. And so here I am preaching about fast forward. And last week we kicked off this series. And I had probably one of the busiest weeks that I've had in quite some time. And so I had to really be intentional. I had to struggle to find moments where I could pause, where I can rest, and where I can reflect. In fact, what my morning looked like last Tuesday morning, after I actually worked through most of my day off last week. And I know this is not normal. I'm not encouraging you to do this. But on Tuesday morning, as I was sitting and preparing, I was actually preparing for 4 of these kind of talks, and 2 of them being to leadership for an hour and a half. And so my week was filled with not only preparing for those things, but then making a trip, a 6-hour trip, and then being there and dealing with other things that took of my time and energy and trying to get all that focused, only to get back here and have very little time to get together and get ready for Sunday morning and then be here in front of you all. So that's what my week looked like. But I had to be intentional about finding moments. I had to be intentional about it. I'm going to get to that, so a little bit more of those details in a minute. But last week we discovered a very fitting verse as we consider the fast-forward pace of modern life. It comes to us from Job chapter 9, verse 25. And it says, "My days go by faster than a runner. They fly away without my seeing any joy." My days go by faster than a runner. They fly away without my seeing any joy. And isn't that how life feels sometimes, right? Don't we feel like it's just on fast forward? Like life is passing us by at such a fast pace, and we often feel as if we're not enjoying the journey, like we're not able to completely enjoy what's happening around us and stop and just have a sense of joy, right? In fact, I asked the leaders that I was able to be with this week, I was like, when was the last time you just enjoyed life? When was the last time that you really had a deep sense of joy in your life and in your heart? And so sometimes we don't sense that because of the fast pace of life. We can't really truly enjoy. Now let me give you just a quick thought about that. Now, how many of y'all like food? Okay, those of you that didn't acknowledge that, you're a liar, but you're in church, and that's a good thing. Okay? The reality is we love food, right? Like we love good food. Like I love comfort food. But man, there's nothing worse than rushing through your dinner, your lunch, your breakfast, whatever it is, right? Breakfast on the go is really not good breakfast at all, because breakfast should be, it should be green chili and tortillas, and it should be some bacon on the side, and, it should be all that good stuff, and, it's okay, life is short anyway, enjoy it. But we should enjoy, right? But sometimes we just don't have that opportunity to enjoy it. It makes sense when we look at a meal, and there's nothing worse than rushing through a meal and like, man, did I even eat that? I guess I'm full, but it wasn't very enjoyable, right? And so we tend to be so busy in life because of the many choices. There's so many choices that surround us, right? So many choices. So many opportunities surround us. And because of that, we live this overwhelming pace. In addition, we're so busy because somewhere deep down inside, here's what we think. And you need to acknowledge this for a minute. Somewhere deep down inside, we really truly believe that we can do it all. And I suffer from that. I suffer from this mentality that thinks I can do it all, I can accomplish it all. I tend to overestimate what I could accomplish in a day, in a week, in a year. But I underestimate it. I overestimate and I underestimate what may take place in my life over the next 10 years. And so, it's just like we constantly live under this idea that we can do it all. And it's a deception. And what it results in is overcommitment. Overcommitment. You ever feel overcommitted? You ever feel overcommitted with your time and like, man, I shouldn't have told them and I shouldn't have done that and maybe I shouldn't have answered my phone or I shouldn't have answered that text message because, look, I'm just overcommitted. I don't have enough time to respond to it all. There's just no way possible. And so, overcommitted. It's what I would call the crazy cycle of overcommitment. So if you're taking notes, you might want to write that down. The crazy cycle of overcommitment. Like it's this cycle, and we get in it, and before you know it, we can't keep up because it's going, and it's just round and round and round and round it goes. It's the crazy cycle of overcommitment. Now, unfortunately, there are some negative side effects, all right? There are some negative side effects of what we call the crazy cycle. For example, because we can't do it all, we feel inadequate. It starts to affect us internally because all of a sudden we feel very inadequate because we can't get it all done. And it starts to affect us internally. We often feel as if we're letting people down around us. You ever feel that way? I know I do. I hate that feeling. But man, I'm familiar with it because the reality is that like we only have a certain amount of time and we are going to let people down. We're going to let them down. We may feel like less of a person because of it, because we're overcommitted and we just feel like less of a person. We sacrifice the quality of our relationships. Tell you what, when we are on this crazy cycle, the quality of our relationships goes down, right? You know this is true, right? You've experienced it. You've seen it in your marriage. You've seen it in your, dating relationship. You've seen it with your children. When you're too busy, when you're too preoccupied with life, it will make the value and the richness of your relationships, it'll take it down a couple of notches. It just is the way it is. It will happen. That's the way it happens. That's what happens as we get too busy. And so ultimately we feel overwhelmed because our overcommitment. It's like we're just overwhelmed because we're overcommitted and our hectic schedules become very difficult to maintain and drive us to a sense of chaos, right? We just feel like life is chaotic. Is this making sense for anybody this morning? It just feels like life is chaotic. Because we're so overwhelmed, we look for ways of coping with stress. And unfortunately, this is where we get into some trouble because this is where we must use extreme caution when we want to cope with the stress of our life because it can lead to some very negative habits in our lives, right? It could lead to some stuff that, like it's just a coping mechanism, but all of a sudden that coping mechanism messes us up. And it becomes a very negative habit in our lives. When our coping skills fail, when any of those coping skills that we used fail, what we try to do is we try to fit it all in by ascribing to the latest philosophy of time management. That's what we do. Like we try to say, you know what? Like I just got to be a better time manager. Like, and if I can be a better time manager, my focus is really to fit it all in. Like, let me cram in all of this stuff. And so time is one of our greatest resources, and how we manage it is very, very important. However, in our time management efforts, and you need to listen to this, we try to figure out how we can fit it all in. But I believe that's where we go wrong. It's not about fitting it all in. It's about fitting in what matters most. It's about fitting in what matters most. Not just getting it all in. Because if we try to fit it all in, ultimately, we're going to live in that crazy cycle of overcommitment. And so it's about eliminating non-essentials and being sure that we are prioritizing what's most important in life. Now, I want to turn to a couple verses, but before we do, I just want to remind you, you may have seen an illustration. It's a very classic illustration of what's called the big rocks. And the idea is that a gentleman takes a jar and he fills it with very large rocks and then asks, is it full? And it appears full. And so the people he's speaking to say yes. And he says, are you sure? And they said, yeah, I'm sure. And then he takes rocks that are about this size and he begins to fill in all of the cracks and crevices in there. And then he asks them again, is it full? To which they say, we think so. And they're catching on to where he's going. He takes next and he grabs some sand and he begins to fill in even more of the cracks and crevices. And ultimately, he asks again, is it full? To which they say, Probably not. And they were right, because the last thing he pulls out is a jar, or a jar of water, and he begins to pour in the water, and ultimately the water finally fills the container. And here's the takeaway from that. The takeaway is this, is that if you're going to fit it all in, you can't put the water in first, right? You can't put the sand in first. You can't put the little rocks in first. You have to put the big rocks in first. It's just the way it is. And so in our lives, we have to put first things first. We have to prioritize what's important and eliminate non-essentials. And so I love what we discover in Psalm 90, verse 12. Psalm 90, verse 12 says this. It says, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Teach us. How many of you know we need instruction from God? He teach us, it says, to number our days. Numbering our days is about managing our time. It's about figuring out, how do I live my life to the fullest? Teach us, God, to number our days. Teach us to prioritize our schedule, to number and work out our days. Teach us to do this. And it says this, that we may gain a heart of what? Wisdom. Notice it doesn't say, so that we can fit it all in. Right? It doesn't say that. It says, teach us to number our days so that we can gain a heart of wisdom. And really what we're saying is, God, would you teach us to number our days so that we can not just fit it all in, so that we can live, so that we can walk in a heart of wisdom. And so as we number our days, we gain a heart of wisdom. And wisdom is essential because it tells us how we should spend our days. It doesn't just tell us all these activities. Because I'm telling you, if you're not telling your days how they're going to be spent, your days will tell you how you should spend them. That's the way it is. If you do not prioritize what's important in your life, life will overwhelm you with what is important. And so wisdom is essential because, again, it tells us how we should spend our days. And so let's go to Proverbs chapter 2. And I want to look at Proverbs 2, verses 1 through 8. And I really want to just camp here for a couple more minutes and discover this truth. So starting in Proverbs chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, "My son," if you're a woman, you can change out son for daughter. "My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding." Let's just stay there on verse 2 for a second. He's saying, again, "My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you," if you accept my truth, if you accept, and really it's about, are we accepting the truth of God? Again, just the previous verse, 90:12 said, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." If God is going to teach us, we have to accept the words of God, and we have to store up His commands in our hearts. We have to accept it and store it. We need to take heed the very words of God, okay? And then it says this, "Turning your ear to wisdom." Turning your ear to wisdom, very important for us. There's a lot we are listening to more voices today than I think we've ever heard in our lives before, right? I mean, there are so many voices competing for the attention of our ear, but we need to turn our ear to wisdom. Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of non-wisdom out there that's trying to catch our attention. And I'll tell you what, it's not worth our time. It's not worth our attention. And so the verse goes on and it says, "Turn your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding." Make application, apply your heart. Focus your heart. Let your heart be attentive to understanding. But I just, a play on words, I think that this is very important for us, is that a play on words would be this, that we would turn our ear to wisdom, but that we would make an application of the wisdom that we're learning. And so we would apply it to our lives. Turn your ear and apply. It goes on, continuing on. It says, "Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure." You see, we all want to find hidden treasures, right? Silver and gold, yeah. We want to find that, but wisdom? It's okay. Understanding? Not so much. But treasure? Gold? Yeah, silver? Love it. "Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then," I love when the Word of God gives us instruction like this. It says, if you do this, then this will happen. It says, "Then you will understand the fear of the Lord. It goes on to read, not only will you understand the fear of the Lord, but you will find the knowledge of God. And I'll just tell you what, God's way is a better way. God's way is always better. I know that for us in humanity, we want to make our way, but I'll tell you what our way looks like. Too busy. Our way looks like fast forward. Our way looks like let me feel more activities in my life, and let me feel more responsibilities in my life, and let me commit to this, and let me commit to that, and let me do this, and let me do that. And I'll tell you what, there are times where if it was up to us, we would literally just cause ourselves to have a nervous breakdown. So we need to stop and take on the knowledge of God and seek the knowledge of God. Verse 6, very important. It says, for the Lord gives what? Wisdom. The Lord gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. For the Lord gives wisdom. He wants to give us wisdom. He wants to teach us how to live a better life. And I'll tell you what, sometimes we look at faith as something that we just do on Sunday mornings. We look at faith as something that's just kind of out there. It's a God thing. But the reality is that God wants to teach us how to live every day of our lives. He wants to give us wisdom. He wants to give us understanding. He wants to give us insight. He wants to give us wisdom so that we can follow His purpose and His will for our lives. And so I love that verse. In fact, James chapter 1 verse 5 says it this way. It says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and He will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. If anyone lacks wisdom, the NIV says, if anyone lacks wisdom, he should ask. And so here we are. If you need wisdom, how many of you know we can use a little more wisdom in life? When it comes to our money, we can use a little more wisdom. When it comes to our faith, we can use a little more wisdom. When it comes to parenting our children, Jesus, we can use a little more wisdom, right? When it comes to dealing with and I say it like that, dealing with our spouse, we can use a little more wisdom, right? God, bless my wife with more wisdom, Lord, because she needs it. She needs it. We need more wisdom. We need wisdom in our relationships. We need wisdom in every area of our lives. And so we have to come back to this and say, God, I'm in need of wisdom. Would you teach me, again, to number my days? Would you teach me your ways? Would you teach me your principles, God, so I can live them out every day and I can accomplish what you have in store for my life? Let's go back to the text we were in. And so we continue on in verse 7. And it says, He holds success. We all want to be successful, right? Let's be honest. Like, you want to succeed in whatever area. Maybe it's not like for you. Maybe your goal and your ambition is not a career success. Maybe you're not looking for business success. Maybe you're not looking for career success. Maybe you are. But ultimately, in some capacity of your life, in some area of your life, you are looking for success. You are hoping for success. In fact, I would just say that that's something that motivates us. You know, I oftentimes have felt disappointment in my life, but I'll tell you what, disappointment is a good thing. Why? Because disappointment is an identification that we're passionate about something. Disappointment tells us that we're passionate about this. And what we're passionate about, it didn't come to pass. And so we're disappointed as a result. It reminds us of our passion. So disappointment is a good thing. If you weren't disappointed, then you're not passionate about anything. But thankfully, we get disappointed because we're passionate about things, because we ultimately want to be successful. And so verse 7, He holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield to those whose walk is blameless, for He guards the course of the just and protects the way of His faithful ones. I love these last two verses in this text of Proverbs chapter 2. I love what God is saying here. Because what He's saying ultimately to us is that He holds success in His hands. That He has it in store. And His way is the wise way. And oftentimes in life we ask ourselves this, is this right or wrong? And there's nothing wrong with that question. But I would just suggest, what if we asked ourselves, is this wise? Like, not is this wrong, and not is this right, is it wise? Because right and wrong, yes, there's a right and wrong, and I'm not saying don't ever ask that question. I'm just saying ask it in a different way, and really ask of God as you approach something in life. Ask God, is this wise? Is this wise for me? Is this wise for me to do this? Is it wise for me to engage in that activity? Is this wise? Is it wise? Is it wise? So he holds success in store for the upright. He's a shield to those who walk in blameless, whose walk is blameless. Couple keywords. For he guards the course of the just, and he protects the way of his faithful ones. And so here, as I want to make an application today, but he holds success in his hands, and he'll grant it to us if we will only turn our ear to wisdom, if we will only apply our heart to understanding. And as we lean on God for his wisdom, I love what that last verse says. What he's saying is he will guard our course and he will protect our way. Like if you want to have a fulfilling life, you're going to need the protection of God over your life, because I'll tell you what, if you do not protect your time, life will take it from you. If you do not protect your time, the kids' activity will take it from you. If you do not protect your time, there will be too many responsibilities that will kill it, stifle it, and you will not have enough time for your life. And so I want to make an application. 3 things that I think are very important in terms of what I would call practical applications. In fact, I would call these principles. And so as we consider wisdom, I want to give you these 3 principles that will help you manage your time and your activities. Okay, 3 principles. You can write these down. The first one is why before what? Why before what? Why before what? Why before what? You see, we always want to ask, what are we going to do today? In fact, my daughter is notorious. I don't know where she picked it up. She picked it up at 3 years old when we were in Costa Rica. What are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing tomorrow? Okay, wait up. It's bedtime and you're asking already, what are we doing tomorrow? You're 3 years old. You're doing the same thing you do every day at 3 years old. You're waking up, you're having breakfast, you're going to kindergarten. You know, you're going to the kindergarten and they're going to speak Spanish there, and you don't know Spanish, and that's why you're asking, because you want to know what you're doing tomorrow. Because you're hoping that we're doing something different and you're not going to kindergarten. You're hoping that you're going to be able to do something. And I, poor thing, man, she struggled through those 6 weeks in Costa Rica. She was, she would cry every night, she would cry. Like, I don't want to go to kinder, And somehow or another, she picked up that question and she carries it with her to this very day. And so she still asks me on the way to church today, she asked me, what are we doing today? And I'm like, besides church? She's like, yeah, like what else? Well, we have lunch together with the church family after church, and then like, you mean what else are we doing? And I'm thinking like 3 or 4 nights, lack of sleep. I'm taking a nap. No Broncos game, perfect time for a nap. Like, and she's in her mind, she's thinking, let's do something. Let's invite somebody over. That's another question my kids ask all the time. Who's coming over tonight? Where are we going tonight? I'm like, man, let's just, right? So, I say all that to say this. Why before what? Why is always more important than what? When we simply fill our lives with the what, we get overwhelmed. When it's just, what are we doing? We get overwhelmed. When we allow why to fill our lives, we find fulfillment. Very different. The what will cause us to just fill our lives with activity. The why will allow us to experience fulfillment in life. It'll allow us to fulfill the very most important things in life. And so here's my example, okay? And then we'll move on to the second one. The example is this. For me, it's important to spend time with my family. What we're doing is not as important as why we're doing it. We're doing it to bond, to build relationship, to nurture that relationship. And so here's the reality. For me, I had a very busy week. I've already said that. I left here about 6:30 on Wednesday or Thursday morning after working a full week in 2 days, it felt like, or 3 days. And so I left on my way to New Mexico to this conference that I went to, and I came back yesterday, and I arrived about I think it was 7:30-ish. I was able to get a 6-hour drive in 5 hours and 15 minutes. It was amazing, man. Talk about time management. But I got here and I knew that I have about an hour before my daughters go to bed, but I had a lot of work to still get done because I took all of our streaming equipment and we were streaming to leaders that couldn't make the conference, and there were some of our missionaries around the world that were able to watch in and stream with us as well. And so we took the equipment with us and I had to come set that up. I could have drove straight to the church and set that up, but when I got home, my kids would have been asleep. So I went home first, and I took that hour, and I hung out with my kids. And I'll tell you what, when I got there, they're watching, whatever they're watching, Netflix. I mean, they're watching things. And I'm like, okay, you got to shut all that down. And they're like, yeah, but we want to see this episode we've seen 100 times. Not important right now. And we sat down on the couch and I asked them, how was your week and what did you do and how was that experience? And my daughter was telling me about her time here and how God was speaking to her about purpose. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. God really was speaking to me over the last couple of days about purpose in my life. And so we just took that time to talk. And then, of course, before you know it, Selah's like, can I turn the TV back on? No! Quality family time. We're gathered around and we're talking. You know what talking is? No, we're not texting. No, we're not emailing. No, we're not sending, what are they called? No, not instant message, little faces and what is it? Emojis. See, y'all know what I'm talking about? Like, we're not sending emojis. We're actually like seeing each other and smiling, We're actually hugging each other, This is like family time. So again, why before what? Always. Why before what? So it's not as important what we're doing, it's why we're doing it. Why before what? That'll be so helpful for you in your life. Second thing is purpose leads to practice. Purpose leads to practice. Very important principles. Again, first one, why before what? Second one, purpose leads to practice. You see, our purpose is ultimately defined by God. I believe that God, from the very time that Eviana was in her mother's womb, she was being prepared, and that God has a purpose for her life. And I believe the same is true for every one of us today, that even as young as we may be, God had a purpose for us from the very get-go. He had a purpose for our lives. He had a destiny for our lives. And what we have to understand is that our purpose is defined by God. And so to discover God's purpose in our life, we have to connect the dots of what I call personality, gifts, and passions. We need to connect the dots. Too far often, we don't really know what our personality is. So we're living over here, we're not really sure. And then we don't know what our passions are, and we don't know what our gifts are. Well, I'll tell you what, I want to help you with that as your pastor. And so I want to invite you today to what we call Discovery 301. It's going to happen at 6 o'clock tonight. Pastor Ashley will be teaching. And I'll tell you what, as you heard her preach just a few weeks ago, she's dynamic, and so she's going to be teaching that. Also, if you come tonight, we'll be preparing dinner for you, and we'll also have child care if necessary. But I'm telling you, tonight, Discovery 301 is powerful. Why? Because it helps you discover your personality, it helps you discover your passions and your gifts, and connect the dots into purpose in your life. And so I'll tell you what, we give a free personality test. It's worth that alone. I would encourage you to come out to Discovery 301. What I need you to do if you're going to come tonight is sign up at the information center. That way we can be prepared for you. But again, when we really discover our purpose, it's about defining all of those things. It's about defining our personality, our gifts, and our passions. Now let me just say this, side note about passion. Many of us find our passion from our pain. We find our passion from our pain. Like you've been through some difficult times in your life, and now you're compassionate for people who are going through a similar situation, right? You identify with them. When you see somebody struggling, you want to reach out to them. You're compassionate about that. And so the past pains of our lives will help lead to our purpose. It'll help lead to what we're passionate about. Just a side note. And so the third thing is this: priority settles competition. Priority settles competition. Priority settles competition. We all have competing priorities, but when we determine our priorities, it eliminates competition. You need to hear that again. We all have competing priorities, but when we determine our priorities, it eliminates competition. You see, let me give you an example. I love doing what God called me to do. I love being able to lead this church. I love being able to communicate God's word. One of my passions is I love being able to speak into leaders' lives. And so I'll tell you what, I was very fulfilled, as tiring as it was over the last couple of days. I was very fulfilled as I had opportunity to speak in young leaders, emerging leaders, as seasoned leaders, as I had opportunity to speak into their lives. It refueled me. It encouraged me, even as I was giving of myself. But I'll tell you what, when push comes to shove, I have a certain list of priorities. And at the top of my list, of course, is my relationship with God. But second to that is the fact that I am a husband and I have a wife, and my priority is her. My commitment is to her. And not only is she my priority, but I also have daughters, and they are my priority. And for those little boys that are already starting to try to call my daughter, let me let you know, son, I've got priorities. And you are not one of them. And either is your life if it comes down to it. And all of the men said, yeah, come on, somebody. So I have priorities. And I have to realize that when my calling and when my gifting get in the way of my priority of my wife and my daughters, guess what? My family wins every time. Every time they win. Every time. I'm just telling you, there is no competition. I don't have to weigh it out. They win every time. And in the smallest way, even last night, as I came back to as I got home, and I took that hour to go home before I came and finished my work here, they win every time. Even if that requires that I come and I work till past 10 o'clock here. That's okay. Because they win. They win. And so what I would encourage you to do is to really prioritize your life. What is important to you? Because I'll tell you what, social media is just not that important. I'll tell you what, it's just not. Like the argument you got on you had on Facebook, like I'm telling you what, people don't care anyway. So like don't waste your energy, don't waste your time. Like it's just not worth it. It's not worth your time, it's not worth your effort. And you're never going to convince anybody over social media. Amen. Right? You're going to agree to disagree, I guess, or you're going to disagree to disagree. Emoji, sad face, tongue sticking out. Hashtag, I hate you. Priorities. 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 And so as I prepare to close today, I really want us to begin to focus on our priorities. You see, if we're going to manage our time, it's not about really time management. It's about discovering our purpose. It's about saying, God, who have you destined me to be? And Lord, can you teach me of the wisdom of your word? Can you teach me of the wisdom of your word? So that I can have a fulfilled and fulfilling life. You see, I often think about when my life is done and I'm in a box and there's people around, I think about that. You know, what are people going to say? How is that going to play out? But I just want to tell you, like when I get to that point in my life and when I'm in that box and when my life is done, the thing that will matter most to me more than anything else in my life is for my daughters to get up and say, my daddy was a man of God. My daddy was there when I needed him. My daddy was there no matter what he went through, no matter the pressures of life, no matter the leadership responsibilities or opportunities that were given him. My dad was there. I want to hear of my wife say that who he was on stage is who he was at home. He didn't live a fake life. He was himself, altogether real, good, bad, and ugly, and that's who he was, but he didn't fake it. I want her to stand up and say, that's who he was. And I'll tell you what, when all is said and done, I don't care how big of a ministry or how little of a ministry or how far-reaching an influence. The only thing I really care about is, God, was I obedient to what you asked me to do? Was I obedient? Did I obey what you asked me to do? And so in our fast forward pace of life, it's important that we are not only managing our time, but that we are doing what's most important. And so as a takeaway today, I would encourage you to keep this in mind. It may make a little more sense for you if with the context of the message, but why before what is wisdom's way? Why before what is wisdom's way? You see, you have to get the purpose right. You have to get the priority right. Because if you don't get those things right, you'll get so busy in life and you'll be at all the activities and you'll win, soccer mom of the year because you were always there. But your kids will be missing out on what matters most, and that's a relationship with you. You see, you could win dad of the year because you were able to buy all the good stuff for your kids, but if you weren't there for the relationship, none of that matters. Why? Before what is wisdom's way? Father, we thank you for wisdom. We thank you for truth. We thank you for your word. And we thank you that, Lord, it's moments like this that you're knocking on our heart. You're trying to get our attention, and you're trying to cause us to wake up that we can live the very best life that you've created us to live. Now, with your eyes closed for just a second, if you're going to truly put the why before what in your life, then you must discover your God-given purpose. And your God-given purpose starts in a relationship with Christ. And so if you've never begun a relationship with Christ, or maybe for some of you, you've ran from that relationship, you've turned away from God, it's time to come home. It's time for you to commit your life to Christ. And so I would encourage you to surrender your life to Him. So all over this place and everyone watching online today, if you say, I want to surrender my life to Christ, would you just lift your hand right where you're at and put it right back down? If you say, that's me, I want to surrender, God sees your hand. If you say, that's me, I want to commit, God sees your hand. If you say, that's me, would you just lift your hand and then put it right back down? God sees every hand. Online, if you're saying that with us today, if you're saying, that's me, I want to commit my life to Christ. If you're saying, you know what, I'm ready to make a change and I'm ready to live the better life that God has designed for me, it's time. I want to encourage you right there. If you can't raise your hand, maybe you can raise your hand right where you're at. Nobody can see it but God, but that's all that matters. And if you want to, you can connect with us by letting us know. You can email us. We'll pray with you. We'll help you. But here's the deal. For everybody who raised your hand, whether in this place or online, I'm going to ask you and everybody else in this place to repeat a simple prayer with me. Would you just say, Jesus, today I surrender my life. I commit all that I am to you. From this day forward, teach me your ways. Show me your purpose. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. We put our hands together and just thank God for everyone who was responding. For all of you that are online, we applaud you. We're excited about what God wants to do in your heart.